Hello. Today we will be dancing with Gergő, and we've met more or less at the school here at SKH, Stockholm University of the Arts, in the MA in choreography, but also you have been working with and are good friends with my good friend Ofelia. So we have like some sort of connection there. And your work is beautiful. Like it's one of those things that I get so drawn into, and I'm so excited to be privileged enough to experience a little bit of it and have a flavor, because it's so rich as a visual and work material, at least from my perspective. But if people don't know you, what would you add to my poor description?
Thank you. We met on Zoom, actually. You're one of my Zoom friends. It's always so funny when you see someone on Zoom for the first time on this very quirky and really exciting application process that was the application process for this master. I remember I couldn't believe how could this happen through Zoom. Like, how are they going to make it? I was so skeptical about it. And I also had these questions like who am I going to be in one class with? Like, is this really possible to? And then the Zoom call started, and it was so like all of the calls were like so informative, and like I really felt like I'm getting to know everyone who is in the call. Also, people who were, I don't want to call you jury. What were you?
Yeah, I mean, jury.
A jury, yes. Just sounds so jargony. But and
but we were quite friendly, a friendly jury.
Very friendly jury.
I mean, I was half the time in a car or backstage of a theatre. Like, I was on tour. It was insane.
It was also a really nice combination of people, I think, in the jury. I really enjoyed it. Yes, and that's how I ended up in Stockholm again. I am around since 2019, but emphasis on around. I'm either lost in Stockholm or lost in Budapest or lost somewhere in between. A bit of a traveler vibes, but for this year, I think I'm really spending most of my time in Stockholm, waiting for things to open, and then also trying to open to things with sometimes more, sometimes less success. My work, I thought, because we are about to graduate, so I really thought, this will be the period when I will love to talk about my work, and frankly, it's quite the opposite. This is really a moment where I'm talking about it. Feels like some kind of a dissection. But I will try to talk about it. It will be a bit of a kinky experience for me, I think, in some ways. But I think it's safe to say that I'm fascinated about the idea of choreographing a space where not only humans dance, and I'm nowadays also working with these organs that somehow expand into and from the body, into and from everything that exists.
Like physical, like internal organs. Okay.
It's
many
really
questions.
I mean, but it's a great question. No, not internal. I think it's not working at this point. Inter is also not working at this point. Intra might work at this point. At the beginning, they were organs inside the human body, and I was also really going for some very pseudo-scientific approach, and I was like, at some point I was like, fuck that, whose language is this? And then, ever since then, these organs are really they consist of very different forms and shapes and content and medium or media.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
I'm really in the process of figuring them out. I'm also working with a bunch of collaborators who I think are by this time a little bit angry at me because I'm keeping them in a very blurry place. But it's really a time for blurry places. I'm a little bit let down by places that are not.
But maybe we can help by concretizing a little bit, and I can ask you what are we going to do today, so that we can, so you don't feel too much. You have to explain every part of your blur.
Yes, yeah, we will concretize it. Also, we will not be working with these organs directly. Just to tease you.
Yeah.
But there will be a graduation performance May the 2nd and 3rd in MDT. Wow. Capitalism took its effect on me. Yes, I think today I thought it would be the best to do something that I do when I enter the studio. It's a practice that come to life maybe as a response to me being less and less able to focus in that specific way we are usually asked to focus. So it is a way for me to arrive into some kind of a focus, but it's also not like it is really not about centralizing attention in any way. Another thing I'm a little bit let down by these days, but something else. It's called the treat. It was called the treatment before, then I let go of that because we can talk afterwards about why I let go of it. It just didn't feel right.
I never thought that treat is in treatment. Like it had never occurred to me. But great. Okay, but like treat, like trick or treat. Yeah.
Yeah, or like this thing you give to a dog.
Yeah.
I'm also really into dogs. It's a very important part of my work, probably. Exactly. So the main idea, you just need a body and a room and 20 minutes more or less. I think that's like a comfortable time frame for this. And the idea is to build a connection with this room that can be sensuous, maybe erotic, maybe healing, maybe intimate, maybe caring, and hopefully stronger than it was before starting this exercise. So this is a practice of facilitating activities that offer something to all parties involved. One could call it a symbiosis. But I would also encourage us not to spend too much time on trying to figure out what we think this room needs, because somehow, according to my experience, that just builds hierarchies and endorses some anthropocentric thoughts. But you can massage and be massaged. You can offer a dance to the room, or you can offer your body for the room to do a dance with or through. You can use your voice as a vibrator. Really, sky's the limit. And that's it. Maybe the last advice, just like coming off from my experience with this practice, is to also sometimes think about depth and not only surfaces. Because it's a very I love surfaces, but depths are also very much present. So it's definitely not only about the things you touch, or the things you think you touch, the things you see yourself touching. But it's probably more than that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think it's very clear. So about 20 minutes with a buddy, I guess. We are buddies today.
Right.
Thank you. And then build connections through care, eroticism, whatever, and allow those connections to support a symbiosis in the space that's not negotiated verbally, but found perhaps. And then, it can be a dance, it can be a massage, a vocal vibration, but focus on the depth rather than only the surfaces.
Exactly.
Awesome. It sounds exciting. Anything else?
It was filled with these words of care and intimacy and so on, but this doesn't mean it has to be like a feel good experience. So like if you have a shit day, you don't need to try to be that holistic girl from YouTube, you know.
I know. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Then
that's about it.
Yeah, let's pause and we will come back in a minute and people at home can try with their buddy. Maybe it's a dog, since we spoke about dogs and treats. And then we'll come back in a bit. We're back. Wow. That was really beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I had a good time too.
Let's just talk a little bit what we found. This idea of being, building connections and taking care of the non-human in the space. There's something like, it's not just about being there, like, and recognizing and seeing and listening. It's also about somehow trying to connect with almost an emancipatory, like bringing about like its existence into a more stronger way. I found myself like wanting to touch parts of the room or parts of things which maybe don't get touched. They get ignored because they're spiky or hidden or too high or dirty or technical or dangerous, you know, and to sort of somehow include them in the presence of the space. So not only is it the soft, cozy floor that gets touched all the time, maybe the broken floorboard or the side can be touched and cared for in the same way as the floor is. This was really cool, really special.
This is beautiful.
What did you find for yourself here today?
I kept on thinking about like how I find this practice to be a little bit like this ski lift, or is paternosteros an English word for those things that they are continuously going on, and you can choose to step in or to step out, but it's not like then it's not there. So this is really a place where I allow myself to just continue with daydreaming and being in that place I was told I cannot be while dancing so often. Or like I would be the first person for a teacher to look at and say, be present, stop thinking, or be here. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking? Where else would I be? Like, can't you see my body doing these movements in a way that you don't like? I mean, I'm here. Right. And then you mentioned the non-human in the space, and I'm also thinking more and more about the non-human inside my body, like how porous this idea of humanness become. But I'm always is it confronted by, or is it excited about? Probably both. I'm always excited about how, like, anthropomorphism enters, and sometimes I ask it to leave. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, no, you can hang out with us. But I mean, you know, like it's really something people who are like into new materialism a little bit, they sometimes they get a little bit scared from anthropomorphism, and so do I sometimes.
Yeah.
But then in some other times I really feel like, oh, okay, like this is just generating some sort of a connection that has strong limits, because it is probably empathy, or like a strategy to empathize, and that always comes with a loss, no? Like, because it's also somehow like imagining being something else, or someone else.
Yeah.
And something more specific to this room. We have to explain this. So we are in a room that, like a very cold room. Like the temperature is what, like somewhere between 17 and 18 maybe.
Yeah.
So I think like I really wanted to like. It's strange. Like I was somehow bothered by not the temperature, but the difference between the room's temperature and my own temperature.
Yeah.
So somehow I really wanted to open my body to exchange a little bit, or to like find some kind of a common ground, which is not necessarily the best strategy to survive stuff, but like
I mean, like I had it with the cold. There's a big metal beam, and also the window. Like they're so cold.
Yeah.
That I felt like, because of the practice, I was like, I want to touch you, because I feel like you wouldn't be touched normally, because it'd be like, oh no, it's too cold. And I wanted to, like share some of my heat, maybe.
Yeah.
To sort of like approximate the sort of temperature. It is, and also the room is it's a dance studio, and yet there are so many elements in it which are not maybe conventional for dance. Like there's all these metal beams, there's a big metal tubing which ventilates the air. There are loads of glass lampshades.
Right.
There's bricks which you can sort of like climb up onto and sit with. There's a chair and table. There's a piano and a piano stool and a desk chair sort of thing. And then there's some shelving as well. Like they all sort of add. But the thing that you just said now about the non-human in me, this is a really, for me, a really nice way of reframing the question of like, rather than going to the non-human and anthropomorphizing it, but to also recognize the non-human in oneself, right?
Right.
This is so beautiful. And when we were up here with the pillar, we were sort of hugging the pillar together, and you were vibrating with your voice, and I joined you. I really felt a sense of like, this could be an organ. This could be like some blood vessel in my body, or it could be an extension of my esophagus or something in my throat. Especially with the vocalization and stuff. And I wonder, is that where the symbiosis comes in? The sort of like, it's not about maybe creating binaries, like this is non-human, this is human, but to try and recognize the blurriness of the two, things being human and non-human simultaneously, perhaps, or?
As far as like symbiosis goes in this framework, I think I just want to avoid exploitative approaches. I want to avoid the idea of using space for now, for this practice. no, in general, probably for my artistic work, like it just never fucking works. But like I understand that this is something people do, and like I don't condemn it. But here I don't think it works as an approach.
Yeah.
And then like then comes in the question that this room doesn't want to be warmer. Like that's a place like that. I don't want that idea to move me, because no, it's so because of this. Symbiosis is always like it's like I don't know, pressing play and hoping for the best. Like it's really just a wish, a hope that if I feel like if I project this hope, like I hope this is good for you, then something will happen, or something will get better.
And how do you deal with what you bring with you, either like be it intentional or maybe unintentionally, like because you are bringing heat to the room, because our body is quite a hot thing. So
Thank you.
And that. But do you know what I mean? Like, how do you, maybe your toxic waste, or your imprint and marking, because it's not only about not leaving a trace, or like
it's not about not leaving a trace, like
right.
Like when I say I don't want to exploit a place, it doesn't mean I don't want to graffiti it, or I don't want to make a mess inside. And I think also like this is something I think that is probably important to talk about inside SKH, this very institution where all the walls are white and barely anything can make it on the wall that is not a 30-year-old Evia Lilia painting. It's really, really sterile for an art school. And it does have some kind of an effect that this Octavia Butler quote, I think, really fails on in this institution. This, how is it? Everything you touch, you change. Everything you change changes you, right? I don't see the change. This place is quite intact. And then it also also this question of like extending the body comes in, or like who's like space as the extension of human bodies, and then whose body is extended when you look at the rooms of SKH. This is I'm not the master of this knowledge, but this is Sara Ahmed and clear points of orientation. And,
but
we spent some time with this now with Nasim Aghili. I was on a course with her, so that's where these questions right now come from. It's not from my. I'm inspired, so
I had to think about how, as audiences of theatres, often we behave as though there are no marks. That that we pretend that we can't hear the audience noises. We pretend that we can't see the emergency exit sign flashing, or some technology, or we pretend that our day hasn't affected our mood when watching. We try to not include it as a part of what is happening, and there feels like there's also a theatre of institution as well, and I wonder if that plays a role. Like the theatre of Escohor is a theatre of we need empty spaces. I mean, and it even says on the walls, please keep the rooms exactly as they were in this picture.
Yeah.
And
that's also because of this big imaginary fire everyone in Sweden is like so afraid of, and it has never ever
But also,
it was the first thing I read when I entered to Sweden. I was an intern at Kullberg, and I went to the toilet and to pee, and I sat down on the toilet, and then there was this like fire protocol in front of me. So I learned it by heart by the end of the year.
No, but also the big invisible contract of like, no, this is what dance is, for instance, or this is what these buildings are for, and because when you look closer, there are marks, there is traces, there's even marks of descent which has been cleaned up, like perhaps like someone has drawn on the wall and you can see that someone's tried to paint over it or clean it. So there is these qualities exist as well, like there is a history, but the theatre is so strong of like, these walls should be kept clean, this space should leave no marks, these parts of the room, like its ceiling and the lamps and stuff, aren't included in the dance, this kind of thing.
I remember I was touring with my solo, and it would always be in the rider that if there is a way not to have curtains, then it's great to not have them. I love curtains, but somehow as a symbol, they just, like they cover something that is there. And we would go to Cyprus, to this tiny theater, via Dance House La Messos, a really lovely center there. And so, there were curtains everywhere. And in some places, the curtains were bulging out. And I asked them, okay, so, like, what's behind? And it turned out that the theater stores all these different sets behind the curtains because they do not have a storage. And I felt so adventurous. I was like, you know what? Let's take the curtains away, and then there will be these sets from different dance shows, and this is going to be the theater for deepfake. It felt so conceptually appropriate to do that, and then I looked at it and I could not I could not bear because also it turned out it's this children's theater very often, so it was like Pinocchio and a lot of different things, and I felt like, okay, now I'm a little bit conflicted with my own self about work, but definitely the question of neutrality probably is something that's worth thinking about, what is neutrality in the theater, what is neutrality in the studio, and why are we so worried of leaving marks. I just found this score in Studio 12. Someone left it there, and it was about different things I could do because the person who wrote the score already did them there. And there was this very lovely idea in it about taking care of this room and having something that is continuously going, and that piece of paper will be taken out by someone at some point, either cleaning personnel or someone else. But if you don't, it's not going to stay there. If you tape it on the wall, still not. I don't know in what ways will it be. So long story short, when I say exploitative, I think exploiting spaces versus seeking for symbiosis. I think here in exploitation there is something it's not very concrete what I mean. I think it's really an intention, an intention you can have or not have. Maybe it's something about avoiding the idea of destroying things other people made, or the space in some ways developed by itself. But it's definitely not about not leaving a mark. Let's leave marks.
But what I really like is, amongst all the, it's highly critical, but it shouldn't be. And what I love is that the practice, it invites us to take care, which isn't a violent act, and yet I feel so often these political movements which challenge norms, they're always judged through the lens of violence, when the violence is the lack of ability to exist within a space, to be recognized, to have the possibility to identify with oneself in a space. And that's why I think we should use these words like exploitation, because it really is material, and
yes,
through this type of practice one engages in the lack of care or inclusion that is sort of like provided by these conditions, because the institution is manifested through the objects in the room, through the room itself, but also through the theatre, the choreography, or the expectations that we police ourselves to uphold and manifest. And also maybe to also attach like when in that position of trying to challenge the norms or the status quo, one is always asked, what are you proposing? Give us a template, tell us how it's different, tell us what it is. And it's like, but we're already in a position where we can't even exist within these structures. How are we meant to be able to provide you a clear blueprint for what needs to happen and what needs to change? Of course, we can get better at that, but the responsibility always falls on the persons that don't already feel included to somehow define what is needed when they don't even have the opportunities to discover them. And that's what's really beautiful about this for me at least, like this practice. Like I start to recognize the needs maybe and articulate my needs in this normative space and the conditions that it sort of upholds. It becomes like a utopia production machine, even if there are certain limitations to it, and that my discoveries might not be completely like ready for political houses, but blurry, and that's okay, and it's allowed. And because the care for me, this is a question, I know that was a long rant, I felt like it was also projected towards myself. Like I felt like I had to take care of myself just as much as I took care of the space or the objects and the connections.
Absolutely. I think it ricochets and either comes back to you or you're already doing it internally. It's also a role. I don't know. Have you done that score with the beginner and the master?
Maybe a while ago.
I think it's cute. It's.
Do you want to describe it
for
the listeners at least?
I mean, I did it in this very dancey dance moment of my life, which I really like dancey dance. So no judgment on that. But it was so we were dancing a lot, very like big movements and a lot of like traveling in space and twists and twirls. And so we had to be in duos, and one of the people were the master and the other person was the beginner, and we were making these dances together just with this proposal, with this very intention, very often touching each other in these specific ways. It was mostly about contact, human to human contact, as far as I can recall. Anyway, like it was a very interesting experience on how like these positions that you give to yourself can be quite instructive. And somehow I have this interest with care also, and I know that there are more urgent ways of relating to care, and those ones should go to the front line. But yes, sometimes I really like to think about care, intimacy, desire as these formless things that are somehow hanging in the air and like flying around, and they don't necessarily have an object and a subject immediately, but they are just there, and then sometimes they touch you in one way or another. And I feel like maybe this is how it comes up here. Care is like some kind of a quality. I don't know. Maybe I reduce it with that. But
yeah. I mean, even the language we use, the structures that sort of situate these things, and it like you keep on doing this thing where you say like dancey dance, but I love dancey dance. Like there is a tension in the queering of our world that it's not about destroying everything.
Right.
It's somehow about trying to keep the good and get rid of the exclusivity and the harm and the exploitation and the exclusion. Like somehow, like to somehow, yeah. And yet then we find ourselves continuously doing this thing of giving a caveat to the but I love dancey dance and stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely an unfortunate moment. I think I was also like really arguing with people who would say dancey dance in several parts of my life, so now I'm gonna have to argue with myself. But what does that mean? What is my practice? That's also dancey dance. I need dancey dance to be a part of it. It's of course, but we end up there for some reason. It has something to do with canons, in my opinion. And with some, I don't know, none of us really wants to point at it, because even that canon is a blurry one maybe, or like one that doesn't really have this classical ballet kind of like structure. It's not necessarily a written one, but it's there, it's around. And it's that canon is something I can really easily say no to, probably. But yes to dancey dance to everyone listening. That's my final.
But I feel like with this type of practice, it's about engaging and being consequential with one's actions and presence. Like you said, like it's a two-way street. We are taking care of and trying to be taken care of, because also taking care of things can be super violent if the thing doesn't want your care.
Absolutely.
It can, like, to presume what something needs is really dangerous. And that's like you were saying with the cold. Maybe it wants to be cold. Maybe me trying to heat it up with my body isn't what it needs. And so like having that continual dialogue somehow is so important, and it's within the traditions of our canon and so on, like to be in dialogue with them. And it's almost as though, because canon is a problem, and it's when the canon is taught as an unmovable object, something that you can no longer have a two-way conversation with, that it's one way. You must know this is history, this is fact, this is truth, this is and when it doesn't allow for but it doesn't meet with my truth, and yet I don't want to change it either. It's sort of awkward. It's an awkward maneuver, but it's to try and get rid of those authoritarian voices. And maybe when I think of authoritarianism or authority, I always like to think of how is it policed? How is it enforced? And I think it's also to recognize like who is enforcing it, or how is it being enforced, and to reckon with like, is it being enforced in a legitimate way? Is it a safe and caring way of making it happen? Because some things maybe do need to happen, but only if it's legitimate for every person who it affects. If it's no longer legitimate for everyone it could potentially affect, then we shouldn't keep on enforcing it.
Exactly. I also got fascinated about you bringing up. Did you say the word consent, or was just me imagining it? But
I think maybe you
was
imagined
something
it,
around consent with like what does the object want and so
yes,
forth.
Definitely.
That was definitely there, and this is something I've been like trying to. Well, not like finding a solution. I don't need to do that, but it's also clear that it cannot be a process of translation. That this is something else there. I would dance with chairs sometimes because chairs are great and they are around. And also because I would never do that on stage because of this particular canon. So I also have this like a process-oriented approach, or like not so product-oriented approach. I know I will not end up with something that I will want to rehearse afterwards. And then I was invited to teach a workshop, and so there were all these other people there. And there is this moment in the practice at the very beginning where I kind of check in with the chair, if this is all right. And it was a group of queer people, and I remember I was really trying to make an effort to make it clear that this is not the same thing. Because if you would translate it, it would be super problematic. Because the chair is not going to say yes, and I'm going to touch the chair anyway. So it's literally what you should not do in relation to human consent. Yeah. And I think so far, the word that I could find that I can somehow resonate with is looking for / what's even better maybe, waiting for an opening, waiting for a moment of permissiveness when you can get in there, when you feel it's right to touch the chair.
Because you also had that sub-score of go deep, because sometimes with consent making, it gets translated to surface level contact.
Right.
Or surface level interaction, and that can be just as damaging. We all know that, and it has nothing to do with the level of depth. It has everything to do with whether or not it is mutually accepted between all parties, and that's completely different. And just being in the same room can be problematic for some, and also, I think what's super clear is that if it is about consent or has some sort of quality of consent, it's continuous. Like consent should be with human to human. Like, so often we see like, oh, you said yes once, therefore it's always yes. No, it's not always yes.
Exactly.
It always needs to be revisited and checked in somehow. Yeah. Well, thank you for consenting to share this with me and to do this with me. And I know your work will definitely affect me and continue to be involved, especially with you having presentations coming up, like you said. But it's a real privilege. I'm really, really grateful. It's such a wonderful practice. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, 1,000 times.
But if people want to see you, get to know you more, you mentioned deepfake, so you have this great website, deepfakeworld.world.
Yes, it's deep-fake.world.
Yeah.
I think, yes. And it was unavailable because I forgot to pay the domain fee, but now it's back. Yes, and there will be yet another deepfake in Budapest if you are around later in May. And I also want to, I actually want to promote this class because we will have a graduation show, 4 different nights. Each evening there will be 2 of us presenting their graduation works. So we have the Thursday and Friday, 25, 26th of April. These are the same nights. And then another set of nights on the 27th, 28th. That's a Saturday and the Sunday. And then the week after, 2-3 May, with the same people. And then 4-5 May with another set of 2 people in MDT.
All of it is in MDT?
All of it is MDT.
Nice.
Yes, it's going to be beautiful. We still need to figure some stuff out about when should we start, because this is obviously like a festival, or like at what time.
Yeah.
So because
but they
this
can
is
find out
obviously
on the website closer to
yes,
the time.
yeah. Now I think they say but this will air later. I just figured. Okay, yes. Yeah.
And then people can also check you out on Instagram, or is that more of a personal place?
Oh, it's blurry. It's very blurry. No, check me out on Instagram. It's instagram.com/Salome Snores. Yeah, you will find everything there, like a link tree.
Yeah. And you're a wonderful artist and a wonderful person. So thank you so much.
So are you.
Okay, well then hopefully we see each other again, and thank you anyone who listened and maybe managed to connect with their environment.
Yes, thank you very much. Bye, Peter.